Welcome back to our course on transformational leadership, strategy and governance. We're going to be looking in this module at culture, organizational culture, and particularly how to create a culture that enables our organizations to operate effectively in the kind of change context that we're working on. So as we remember from the integral model, we had these 4 different quadrants, and culture is located in the lower left quadrant. So it's the interior of the collective. And that's the space where we have all the shared values with each other that are not made explicit to the outside world, but inform how we engage other groups. So within a family, we have certain unspoken assumptions about the way we do things, what's allowed and what's taboo. The same in local cultures or the same at national level. We all have certain shared values or things that are hidden from the rest of the world that define our collective identity. So that's the culture that we're looking at within organizations or communities. How to create a culture there of shared perspectives, values, ways of looking at the world that enable that organization or system to be transformational and to operate in the kind of change context that we've sketched out. So here's a little definition of culture for those who like definitions. Culture is the shared values, ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular group. So if we stay with that for a minute, the shared values, things we care about, the ideas, the customs, the things that we've always done in a certain way that we keep doing that way, and the social behavior, so the way we interact with each other of a particular group. So those things inhabit the cultural sphere, and the question is, how do we create a culture that enables us to be transformational in the world? So if we add on to the quadrants the levels of development that we talked about before through the spiral dynamics model, then we'll see that culture is going to show up in different ways depending on those underlying value systems. So as we're looking at culture, it's important to think about what seems to be the center of gravity in terms of value systems for these cultures. Are they more geared around the purple tribal element? Are they more geared around a feudal power gods kind of structure where the strongest wins? Are they very hierarchical, order-driven systems where you know your place in the whole? Are they more entrepreneurial, focused on improvement and progress and research, more coming out of the orange value system here? Or are they more consensus-driven, where people care about including everybody's opinion, making sure everybody is happy with any decision that's taken, taking care of each other? Or from the integral perspective, are they more functionally driven? So looking at everything that's there and asking ourselves, given what needs to happen, how do we pull the different pieces together? In an integral culture, people are less concerned about whether they're being seen and whether their perspective is seen as right or wrong, but how can they play a role and bring the piece they have to bring to the bigger picture. So in that way, culture can be seen in the context of these different value systems. There was an interesting piece of research that was done by Gallup that looked into 12 elements of what they called great managing. So we're going to take a look at these because you could think of them as characteristics of a culture that leads to an open, engaged culture where people feel committed, and they seem to be fairly universal, that they kind of cut across different organizational contexts. But with these conditions in place, you have people motivated, a flexible, resilient environment where people are really ready to get on and do what needs to be done. So this is what emerged from their research as those that best predict employee and work group performance. So if you kind of do use these as a checklist and see which of these are in place, that'll determine how effective and aligned this culture could be. So the first, I know what is expected of me at work. So there's transparency around the role that you play and what people are counting on you for. You know what other people are counting on you for, and other people know that as well. So there's a transparency about our job descriptions, you could say, or what is expected of us. And then you know your place. You can relax. And then you can have a conversation further about to what extent you are meeting those expectations, but at least we know what the contract or agreement is. The second one was, I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. So if you're committed to doing something, you're clear about what others can count on you for, you need to have the stuff you need to do it well. So that was a criteria of people feeling committed and engaged at work, that the different elements, materials that they needed to be able to do it well were available to them. The third that they came across was, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. So that really speaks to enabling people to bring the best of themselves to their work, that they're being seen for their highest potential, for their passions and skills, and that they're able to bring those in to the work environment, that they're not being asked to do something that they're not particularly good at, and that their strengths are not actually being seen or acknowledged in the system. So an important part of a conversation with people we're working with is to make sure that we've really understood where their strengths are, what they're passionate about, and enable them to bring those into the work context. In the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. So feedback is really essential for creating a dynamic and motivated culture. We actually know from the biological studies as well that when people are given positive feedback, it actually enhances the vitality of their system. When they're given negative feedback, if they're continually given negative feedback, people end up falling sick. So the kind of feedback that we get enhances our vitality. So very important in organizational contexts not to take people for granted. Even the small things, little thank yous, little mails of recognition to say, oh, well done, that looked really good. That all feeds people's sense of belonging and their kind of positive engagement in the organization. The next one, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. So important as it is to be clear on our role and what people can count on us for, our accountabilities, our job description, is to be seen as a person in that context. So we don't just step into our role and leave the rest of our lives at home, but we have all sorts of stuff going on in our lives that relate to us as people. And it makes a big difference to people's engagement and motivation in the workplace if they're being seen as people. If it's not just, you have to do this by this time, and yet you've got a load of other commitments at home, or you need to pick up the kids on time, or whatever, or your emotional reality that's part of you being a person isn't being seen, but you're just being driven almost like a machine to do what you have to, what is expected of you, then people's motivation, understandably, very quickly drops away. So to make sure that we're seeing and acknowledging people as people with all the different dimensions to that. There is someone at work who encourages my development. So having a chance to grow and evolve and learn is also a key part of people's motivation and engagement at work. Somebody's thinking about how can we help you to take the next step, or even just asking the questions around what do you want to be learning, giving you opportunities to learn and develop yourself. Often when organizations come under stress for their budgets, there's not the spending, the first thing they cut is the learning opportunities, people being able to go out on courses. Now, when you start doing that, you get into a negative downward spiral where people are just going to not show up with as much enthusiasm because it's natural in us. We have an innate will to learn, to grow, to develop. And to have an opportunity to do that and for that to be seen in the workplace is very important for a healthy culture. At work, my opinions seem to count. So this is obviously related to the feedback one. There's one thing to talk about employee engagement. We want to have people participating and have their voices heard. But if nothing is done with that, if your opinion which you gave isn't responded to in any way, then very quickly people back out of any employee engagement projects because they can't see how what they're saying or contributing is actually being taken seriously. Even if it's to say, well, we thought that was a really interesting opinion, but we're not actually going to implement the ideas yet because of this and this reason, then at least people feel that their opinion has been heard, even if it's not immediately being acted on. The mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. So this is really about the bigger level of alignment within the organization, that making the vision explicit for people and the kind of why are you doing what you're doing. In big organizations in particular, you've got a little piece of the puzzle in what you're doing, and for you to feel that the organization needs you to be doing what you're doing so it can achieve its higher goal, and for you to be aligned with that purpose and really feeling the importance of it makes a big difference to you with holding your piece of the puzzle in your own context. My associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. So a key part of the culture is that you sense that others around you are also committed to a high level of quality. Because if you're working really hard on things and nobody else seems to be showing up effectively, then it's going to obviously demotivate you as well. So having a broad culture of a commitment to quality, a buy-in to the vision, a real sense of working on things together makes a big difference to the culture too. I have a best friend at work. It's an interesting one. It's what people found to be really important is that work wasn't just a place of colleagues, but a place where they could develop friendships as well. So when you come into your workplace, you're able to have an informal conversation, exchange ideas about other things that are going on, not just the work environment. So it feels like a community of friends, not just an organization with colleagues who come in, do their things, and then disappear off home. In the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. So somebody's paying attention. Somebody's thinking about, hey, how have things been going the last 6 months? Because if nobody's paying attention, then why should you really bother? So somebody's actually wanting to help you reflect on your progress. What can you learn from what you've been doing? Again, it's all part of really being seen in the organization. Have a sense that people are wanting to take care of you and care about your role and your contribution to the organization. This last year, I have had opportunities at work to learn and grow. So this ties into the other one about people encouraging my development. It's so important that people feel that that they're not just stuck in a job and they have to stay there the whole time, but that they're able to grow and evolve, move into different roles, expand the things that they're doing. Because after a while, we're creative beings. We just get stuck doing the same thing and we want to move on and learn other things and do something else. So to build that into the culture is particularly important. And of course, when we're in these kind of change contexts, having a transformational culture, learning and innovation is particularly important. So to make sure that there are opportunities for that in the organizational context is key. So those are just some tips, you can be looking at as you look at your own organization or your community or your context, how present are these different qualities? Do a little quick kind of check of how well are we doing if we look at these. So very interesting research from Gallup here, which pulled together a bunch of organizations across very different contexts and found these core patterns about what makes for a healthy and open culture. So in the next session, we're going to zoom in on particularly one of these items, which was around the importance of mission, having that overarching goal that we talked about before. So looking at vision, mission, and values and the role they have to play in organizational culture.